you're going to make mistakes in life. I mean, there's no question about it. You don't want to make them on the big decisions, who you marry and some things like that. So there's no way I'm going to make a lot of business and investment decisions without making some mistakes. I may try to minimize them. I don't dwell on them at all. I don't look back. The biggest mistakes are the ones that actually don't show up. They're the mistakes of omission rather than commission. We've never lost that much money on any one investment, but it's the things that I knew enough to do that I didn't do. We have missed profits of as much as maybe $10 billion in things that I knew enough to do and I didn't do. Now, the fact I didn't buy Microsoft way back is not a foregone opportunity because I didn't know enough to make that decision. But there have been other investments where I did know enough to make the decision, and for one reason or another, I either didn't do it at all or I did it on a small scale. I was sucking my thumb when I should have been writing checks, basically. And those don't show up. There's no place where it shows missed opportunities, but I've missed some big ones. The triumphs in life are partly triumphs because you know that everything isn't going to be a triumph. And I would never get too hung up on mistakes. I know a lot of people that really agonize over them, and it just isn't worth it. I mean, tomorrow's another day, and you live it forward and just go on to the next thing.
Start to become overly cautious, kind of failure averse, and therefore unable to invent and pioneer. You cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure. To invent, you need to experiment. And if you know in advance that it's going to work, it is not an experiment. And so that's a very important thing. They are inseparable twins, failure and invention. And so you have to be willing to do that. And it's embarrassing to fail. It's always embarrassing to fail. But you have to say, no, that's not how this works. If I said to you, you have a 10% chance with a particular decision, a 10% chance of a 100x return, you should take that bet every time. But you're still going to be wrong 9 out of 10 times, and it's going to feel bad 9 out of 10 times. And with technology, the outcomes, the results can be very long-tailed. The payoff can be very asymmetric, which is why you should do so much experimentation. Everybody knows that if you swing for the fences, you hit more home runs, but you also strike out more. But with the baseball, that analogy doesn't go far enough, because with baseball, no matter how well you connect with the ball, you can only get 4 runs. The success is capped at 4 runs. But in business, every once in a while, you step up to the plate and you hit the ball so hard, you get 1,000 runs. And so when you have that kind of asymmetric payoff, and one at bat can get you 1,000 runs, it encourages you to experiment more. It's the right business decision to experiment more. By the way, one thing I should point out about failure, and this is a fine point, internally we take it, we know it, and we don't need to talk about it much, but there's a different kind of failure which is not what you want. That's where you have operating history, and you do know what you're doing, and you just screw it up. So that's not a good failure, that's not an experiment, that's just bad operational excellence.
So many things go wrong when you're starting a company, and often I think people ask, what mistakes should you avoid making? And my answer to that question is don't even bother trying to avoid mistakes, because you're going to make tons of mistakes, right? And the important thing is actually learning quickly from whatever mistakes you make and not giving up. Right, and I mean, there are things every single year of Facebook's existence that could have killed us or made it so that it just seemed like moving forward and making a lot of progress just seemed intractable, but you just kind of bounce back and you learn, and nothing is impossible, you just have to kind of keep running through the walls.
Don't let failure ever stop you, use your brain, use your creativity. For example, look at Slack. That thing came out, and that was a complete failure. They too tried a game. The game didn't work, but whatever Slack was became the success, was a dialogue on the side of it. So it's one of the most important messages I have for entrepreneurs, is that failure should inspire you to get smarter. And unfortunately, our school system says if you fail, you're stupid. That is not true. We learn from our mistakes. Mistakes are opportunities to get smarter, be humble, and take a look at something. So anyway, Cash flow board game, just like Slack, was a failure. So I had to write Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is a true story about my rich dad and my poor dad. And suddenly I went on the Oprah show and suddenly I became famous. So anyway, that's an entrepreneur story. That's who I am.
There are so many opportunities in this world, because there are so many complaints. If you can solve the complaint, one of the complaints, that's the opportunity. So this is what we made. I think young people, if my advice to be an entrepreneur, don't be scared of failure, of setbacks, and don't give up. When we start the business, we had 18 founders, including me. 17 of them, most of them my students, and most of them, well, today people think these 18 people, the smartest people in China. We don't think we're smart. Honestly, we all graduate from the very poor schools. The only thing we did was that we're very united. We all believe the future. We are all optimistic. And we learn through mistakes. We never give up. We came today to now. We made so many mistakes. People say, you are lucky. Yes, we are very lucky. We've been only 19 years to today's size. But we've gone through so many tough situations. We made so many mistakes that people cannot imagine. Probably 90 years. You have gone through so many tough experiences. And that will make you different.
If what we're doing is, what I'm doing is, I think is important enough, then I just override the fear. So, but it's not as though I feel like more strongly than I would like. I think also people tend to overweight risk on a personal level. It's one thing if you've got, a mortgage to pay and kids to support, and that if you were to deviate from your job, that, well, how are you going to feed your family and pay the rent? And okay, that's understandable. But let's say you're young and you're just coming out of college or coming out of high school or whatever. What do you risk?
Do everything you can to survive and not to give up. As long as you tried everything you can, then if you fail, you'll sleep okay, and you'll pick yourself up, and you'll learn. When things are better, you'll learn from your mistakes and you'll start again. If on the other hand you give up, you give up too readily, you'll forever kick yourself. And I wish you all the best of your best in your quest to, because I'm afraid there's going to be a lot of people who will fail. But I think the other important thing is just not to take failure too seriously. I mean, it's something that happens to something like 80% of all small business people fail. Either go into Chapter 11 or actually go bankrupt, and that's a lot of people. And some people take that really badly, and they should realise that it's an important thing just to learn from it and come back and start again. And an awful lot of really big multi-millionaires and billionaires who've been through 2 or 3 bankrupt companies in their lives, and have learned from them and have come back the stronger. It's what limited companies were designed for by governments. It was to say to people, try things, and if you fail, it shouldn't affect you personally. People know the risk they're having in dealing with you, and don't be embarrassed about your failure as long as you've tried everything you can to avoid it. Don't take it too personally.
All human beings are born as entrepreneurs, but unfortunately many of us never had the opportunity to unwrap that part of our life, so it remains hidden. Now, as you do have the opportunity, don't waste it. I think entrepreneurship is our natural state, a big adult word that probably boils down to something much more obvious, like playfulness.
Okay, I should do it myself. I can do it better than they're doing it. And if you can have that screw it, let's do it mentality, just try things, keep trying things, and then ultimately, something will stick, something will work, and then once you've once you've been able to build one entrepreneurial company, you can build any numbers of entrepreneurial companies.